Hello, everybody, and welcome to this special crossover episode of the Penguins Fly Game Day podcast and the tip of the Ice-Burgh. I'm your host, or I guess lead panelist, considering how many of us there are. But I'm joined today by Jeff Taylor and Jordan DeFigio of the Penguins Fly Game Day podcast, as well as my good buddy and co-host of the tip of the Ice-Burgh, Nick Horwat. Whether you're listening to this on the Penguins Fly audio channels or you're checking it out anywhere you find Tip of the Ice-Burgh, we welcome you. We're going to talk a lot about Sidney Crosby because that is the end-all be-all of this week for the Pittsburgh Penguins and for the hockey world. But we're also going to dive a little bit into the opportunity for Mike Sullivan at the Four Nations Face-Off, as well as a little discussion about the Penguins' floor and ceiling for the rest of the season. But I think we all agree that there's only one place to start this episode, and that is with the man, the myth, and the legend, Sidney Patrick Crosby, because he has been dominating the headlines since before the Four Nations Face-Off even began. I mean, it was, is Crosby going to be healthy enough to play? Is he going to even be in the lineup? Are they going to just take him off the roster in general by Monday when they had the deadline? But instead, he plays. Not only does he do that, but he plays extremely well and comes away with Player of the Game honors in Canada's 4-3 win in overtime over Team Sweden. But before we get into his performance and what it means and what it could mean for the future of this tournament, I wanted to talk about what happened pregame. Because as Penguins fans, seeing Mario Lemieux come out in Bell Center, get that type of ovation, and then, of course, wink and just kind of shoo Crosby over to him, that was a moment that, to me, stood out as a Penguins fan, as somebody who looked at it and said, this is special. So I'll ask, let's start with Jordan. What did that moment mean to you? Because I know that you were texting in the group chat and just basically saying this is absolutely awesome.
Dude, I was not prepared. I was so caught off guard when all of that happened, and it wasn't because I was surprised. I just was I don't know where my head was, but when Mario walked out and he and Sid shared that moment, I think my jaw was genuinely literally dropped. In awe of what we were watching, because the history of the sport and the impact that Mario and Sid have had on it across leagues, across tournaments, it's just wild. And to think as Penguins fans, we've gotten to claim those two players as ours, just insane. The amount of talent that we have seen come through the city of Pittsburgh, and then getting to watch Sid prep to represent his country in this tournament. It was such a surreal and beautiful moment for the Penguins, for the sport, for Sid. And honestly, because there was so much talk about whether or not he was going to play, the fact that he was there, I'm sure that means just so much to him, that he was healthy enough to play and was in that game. And then to, just that little like wink between him and Mario, it was so cool. Wow. Yeah. What a moment. It was the perfect way to begin that game and that tournament in general. Just incredible.
Yeah. For a tournament that we're not 100% sure going into, we didn't know how it was going to go. We didn't know what it was kind of going to look like. Once what's his name, Pietrangelo dropped out, we were thinking, okay, is it really actually going to get treated like an all-star game? Are guys going to keep dropping out? But we found out pretty quickly that everyone that is involved wants to be there and wants to play. I can remember, sitting there last night watching them start to pull out some of the veterans of international play, like Mike Richter and Teemu Selanne. I started thinking, who could they be getting for Canada? I mean, Gretzky was just in the TNT booth or doing TNT pregame. He's in Atlanta, so he's not there. I thought maybe they'd find some old Montreal Canadian, because appropriate. They're in Montreal at the Bell Center doing it. And then I had a couple of chills, and I was like, wait, they got Lemieux for this. And it was an extremely appropriate person to get, extremely appropriate gesture, and just a perfect all-around situation for for Crosby, for Team Canada, and for the entire tournament as a whole to kick off just the right way like that.
Oh, yeah. Technically, Mario Lemieux is an old Montreal Canadian. But I got a text a little while beforehand spoiling this for me. Someone said, little bird emoji, and it said, looks like 66 is doing a ceremonial puck drop. I can't believe it. And I thought, Ashley, my wife, and I were out running an errand that was necessary, and we couldn't rush it. So I was like, oh, please let me be home. So we ended up on Washington Road, out in the South Hills. I'm like weaving in and out of traffic, and it looked like there was no way. So I had to pull over into the Bonefish Grill and throw it into park. And we just sat there and watched all that happen and unfold. I mean, Mario comes out with a little wink. And like you said, Jordan and you guys, the little gestures, everything mattered. And then when they cut later back to the footage from inside the locker room of Mario reading the lineup out and then bringing Sid over, I just thought, I'm just so grateful to be watching this. I mean, here's Sid, clearly the elder statesman now. Looks like the elder statesman too, even in the commercials where they're kind of, and I'm wearing my Sid jersey so they do the little turn. I was like, geez, he's only in his mid 30s or, late 30s, but he looks like an older gentleman compared to the young bucks. But so cool. And like you said, we'll get into the actual on ice stuff, but the overall whole thing, the pomp of it, the ceremony, the fire you could feel from inside the rink, and seeing the international, all the displays of the two different teams and that color matchup of the yellow and blue versus the red and white just felt international. And like you said early in the intro, Nick Belsky, the buy-in was there from the teams, from the players, especially from those lower roster players who were so stoked that they eked onto the roster. And then look at the game we ended up getting. I mean, it made good.
Yeah, to put a bow on the Lemieux of it all, I thought it was even better that Crosby had no idea that he was going to be there. They were talking post-game, and shout out to DK Pittsburgh Sports, Taylor Hoskins, on location. She posted the full video post-game of McKinnon and Crosby talking, and Crosby said, they told us that somebody was coming in. They didn't tell us that it was Mario, so to see him come in was something special. So that the entire way they handled that was tremendous. And again, like Horwat said, this is a tournament that has been very much under a microscope as people saying, well, it's a money grab. Well, are people going to care about it? But I think that moment there set it off on the right trajectory to kick things off. And the game following it was even better. I mean, again, Horwat, you mentioned, our guy's going to be bought in. Is it going to be treated like an all-star game? I mean, shout out Ricard Raquel. He was dumping bodies left and right. He wasn't treating it like an all-star game. This is a guy that was snubbed from the roster on December 4th and had to earn his way onto it. You think in the back of his mind, he's not thinking, if I have a good showing, I'm going to get to be on the Olympic roster in 2026. So There was buy-in, and you saw it, and we got maybe not Team North America versus Team Sweden from the World Cup game, but we got a very good game out of it. And Sidney Crosby, credit to him, put it on the ice. 3 assists, all primary assists, a crazy 10-minute overtime, and Crosby dishes the game winner to Mitch Marner and his named player in the game. So I look at everything that happened last night, and Horwat, I'll go to you first for this one. We talked on Tuesday, and both of us said Connor McDavid is likely the tournament MVP that we would choose. Do you change your mind after one game and look at it and say, listen, if they win gold, it's going to be hard for those voters to not check the box of Sidney Crosby?
Yeah, assuming he continues on a pace like this, that will be a tough decision to make. It will likely go to Crosby in that sort of situation. Unless McDavid, there was multiple moments during the game where McDavid was breaking through, was finding his own, was adding his skill into the game, was bringing everyone to their feet without even scoring. I kept seeing clips of him pop up on Twitter just of him skating through people. I'm like, okay, I'm ignoring the clip because he didn't score though. But if he starts capitalizing on things like that, McDavid will steal the show pretty quickly. I just think for the opening game, it was very appropriate that Crosby had those moments. Very much what could turn into for this tournament into the Olympics, a passing of the torch between Crosby to McDavid. Who knows exactly how all that goes? But I'd say for now, if Crosby can keep up this pace, because he has all of the fanfare behind him now, and all of the look what he's doing at 37, all of the social media all the attention on social media, it'll turn pretty quickly into his tournament. Now we'll see what Team USA does today, but for now, absolutely, he's going to be the front runner for the MVP until someone like McDavid steals the show with, say, a 5-point night against Finland.
Yeah, which very well could happen because he has that kind of star power behind him. But damn, within the first minute, watching that exchange from McDavid to Crosby, back to McDavid to Crosby, and then just that slick behind the back pass. Ooh. God, right to McKinnon. That was just gorgeous. And, this obviously is something that hockey fans worldwide are watching. Not everybody's tuning into Penguins games all the time. So it's also really cool to have that perspective that there are a lot of people who don't really get to see Sid play that often do what we've been watching him do for like 20 years. It's just ridiculous. His awareness and his ability to handle the puck and just know where everybody is all the time. He is, it's really hard to argue that anybody is a better overall hockey player than he is from top to bottom. He's just, he's so good, and he's a game changer. And yeah, McDavid has that speed and that he just, he'll blow through anybody. But God, the things that Sid can do are just next level. And it's so fun to watch him do that as he's approaching 40. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, you nailed it. And, you're talking about, Jordan, you're talking about watching McKinnon go one-on-one, or in the overtime watching you said McDavid, but watching McKinnon go one-on-one like 3 or 4 times in a row in the OT. I never felt like he was going to score. It's funny. I mean, he's passing the puck to himself in in the middle of the ice, not off the boards to himself around a defender. He passes the puck forward, McKinnon, skates at turbo speed to catch the puck. And I've never seen anyone else do something like that in my, again, shorter time than some of you guys watching the sport since like 2017 or so. He's sort of singular in that way, but it still takes that grizzled salt and pepper veteran who is now Sid Crosby to set these plays up. He knew all the way on that play that Mark Stone was trailing. You see him look over his shoulder earlier, then he comes somehow within a half-second span of time, then refocuses the attention on the puck and the defender on him, sets the whole thing up where he turns to the outside and then passes it back. I just bumped my mic. And then passes it back from Mark Stone. Same thing, Jordan, like you said, that ridiculous. I almost jumped up, threw my headphones down, and grabbed my hockey stick to do the like they do in the studio in TNT. But we all know what it looks like. Anybody who pays attention to Crosby's career, even just from afar, in fact, it's almost a little clearer to watching on TV because it happens so fast. Even at his age at 37, it was just like you said, Nick Belsky. I am gushing. I'm not going to settle down between now and the end of this podcast. It's not going to be my finest hour as an orator, but I am happy to share this and enshrine this moment of excitement because it really did live up to everything that it could have been last night.
All right, let's take a step away from the Four Nations because Sidney Crosby, like we mentioned, he's been having a week, and it's not just with everything happening in Montreal. He's actually honored by his junior league, not his junior team, who he's already been retired with, but his junior league. The QMJHL is now renaming the Rookie of the Year trophy after Sidney Crosby. Any Rookie of the Year from the QMJHL will now be awarded the Sidney Crosby Trophy. Of course, this is all due to the fact that Sidney Crosby took that league by storm when he was 16 years old, going to the Rimouski Oceanic in 2003-2004. He scored 135 points in 59 games. He finished his junior career with 2 years, 303 points in 121 games. So absolute destruction from Crosby to the QMJHL. I'm going to ask you this first, Jeff. Is everybody just honoring Crosby now because they know the second he retires, he's going to disappear into the woods and only come out once a year?
I've thought about this a lot, Nick Abelski. I really do think Sid, knowing him as I do, which is not at all, except I did get to shake his hand one time and chat for like 3 seconds. He was really friendly, which is what everyone who ever meets Sidney Crosby says. Knowing him not at all, but hearing all the stories and reading a lot of y'all's articles and the other people in the press, it does strike me that Sid Crosby will go to the lake house and sit in the bass boat, have people over. He loves to travel. He loves to mountain bike and go see wolf sanctuaries and go to Europe and travel. He's a fun player to follow, and I think he's going to be even more fun to follow in the post-playing career in some ways, but that post-playing career is not going to start right after he hangs up the skates. I do see him taking a break and being as kind of a sort of private-ish guy. It's like when he leaves the rink, he seems like a very private guy. Obviously, when he's at the rink, he couldn't be more generous, and I think that's why he probably will take some time to recharge the batteries there.
Yeah, it'll definitely just serve as a well-deserved time off. Just you've put in the years of work, put in the endless hours of practice, endless hours of game time, and just one of those periods of just take a break, take a month, take 2 months, like as we would do with normal vacations. Just take a week off. He's going to deserve 3 years for all the things that he's done for all the things he's done for the team, the city, and now his own country. He'll get as much time off as he wants, and whenever he's ready to come back in any way, shape, or form in terms of some sort of coaching, some sort of scouting, some sort of management, whatever it is, whatever he wants to do, if he wants to do any of that, there will not be a shortage of people lining up to hire him for whatever it may be. It's going to be a well-deserved time off, and maybe he'll document it somehow. I mean, he's not very social like that, but we would all want to know what he's doing post-playing career for sure.
Yeah, I think the funny thing is with him is it almost feels like it's going to mirror what Lemieux has done since selling the team. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go do what I want to do. I mean, I don't want to go as far as to say he's going to become a hermit, but it feels like Sidney Crosby off the ice. That's a little bit of what he is. He doesn't go out much. When he does, it is on the down low. He rents out the back room, and that's what he is. So again, he deserves all the honors that he gets, but it seems like everybody knows that, hey, once this guy's gone, he might be gone. So let's honor him now while we know that we can get his attention. Like the QMJHL is probably like, well, he's going to be in Montreal. This is the chance. Let's get him in a room and just say, hey, here's a trophy that's named after you. And Sid's reaction to that in the video was basically like, oh, that's so cool. It's pure Sid, as Jeff alluded to, but just another honor for one of the greats of the game. Let's get back into some Four Nations discussion, but this time talking about Team USA. Mike Sullivan. It's going to be a big week for him. We talk about Raquel, the opportunity that he's getting on the ice. We talk about Erik Karlsson and representing his country once again. We talk, of course, ad nauseum about Sidney Crosby, but it's a very big opportunity for Mike Sullivan as the head coach of Team USA, not just when it comes to the tournament, which we'll talk about here in a couple minutes, but it's his first chance to coach his son-in-law. This is a story that we don't get to see very often. Obviously, for those who don't know, Charlie McAvoy is Mike Sullivan's son-in-law. And when asked about the opportunity that's in front of Sullivan and McAvoy, Sullivan told NHL.com, quote, "We're going to go about it the way we always go about our jobs. He's going to compete on the ice. I'm going to coach the team to the best of my ability, but to have the opportunity to coach my son-in-law in an event like this someday, I think we'll look back on it and smile with just having the opportunity to work together in that aspect." So Mike Sullivan, obviously a very interesting, very cool story coming out of this. USA opens up their Four Nations against Finland. Jordan, let's start with you. I mean, you see this story and you see the opportunity for Sullivan, not just to coach, his son-in-law and Charlie McAvoy, but to coach probably one of and Mike Eruzione said it earlier today, the most talented Team USA that we have ever seen. It's a crazy opportunity and one that it seems like could highlight Mike Sullivan as what most people outside of Pittsburgh look at him as is one of the best coaches in the NHL.
I think it is a really good opportunity in so many ways. And, it is cool for him to be able to work so closely with his son-in-law, because you would imagine he's not seeing much of Charlie McAvoy. They're both off doing their own things, taking these jobs that take them to all these different cities. They don't get to spend a lot of time together. So this is going to be very intense time that they're with each other and that they're working together. So that's got to be really cool. But I also feel like, over the course of the last handful of years, Pittsburgh's feelings about Sully have kind of taken a bit of a nosedive because of the lack of playoff series wins, honestly. And there's a lot of chatter a lot of the time around this city because people are very opinionated about sports and about our teams and who is leading the teams. And I think that has to be somewhere in the back of Sully's mind as he's preparing to coach this roster that is just so star-studded. He's coaching his son-in-law, but he's also coaching Austin Matthews. It's wild. It's going to be so fun to watch. And it will be interesting because how often do we see coaches in positions with teams for any extended period of time where they kind of stop finding success and then they go on, like Paul Maurice, to have tremendous success in a fresh environment? I feel like this could be a really good opportunity for Sully to maybe not redefine himself, but sort of rediscover what made him such a good coach in the first place, because he's going to have these fresh faces in this fresh environment. And hopefully that'll maybe, I don't know, rework the spark in him to kind of bring that back to Pittsburgh with him, because it seemed a little bit like he's settled in his position here, and he's not as quick to make changes to the roster when they need to be made. And he was doing that left and right whenever he first got here in end of 2015. So I think this probably could also just be really great for his confidence, because he's also been dealing with a lot of, subpar rosters with the Penguins. So to be able to go in and represent the United States in this capacity as the coach, I'm excited and hopeful that we'll see him succeed in this role, because he's a likable guy and he's a great coach. And I think that it might also really be good for Penguins fans to see him be a good coach.
Yeah, it's going to be that opportunity for them, because as Penguins fans, there's always a weird, divide in your head when international play comes around, because through the history of the Penguins, or at least the relatively recent history, the best players have always been Canadian or Czech for Yager's sake. Never really has an American in the Penguins organization stood out as the team's best player. So when these international tournaments roll around, the patriotism in you kind of, wants you to root for Team USA. But then you look at the lineup and you realize it's full of a bunch of players you don't really, not that you don't know, but they're not necessarily the players you're always cheering for, which is why every time, at least I watch international hockey, I have this little sense of, I want Team Canada to do well because Crosby's there, because Lemieux was there, because so many other players like that always were represented by Team Canada. For what it's worth to me, Russia would always get a good boost in my head, at least because of Malkin's connection back when they were involved in everything. Now it is time for Penguins fans to look at Team USA and actually have something to back there. For a while it was Jake Gensel until NHL players didn't have international play.
Yeah.
And now they're given a new opportunity with Mike Sullivan behind the bench. They can still root for Gensel if they'd like. But I feel like there will be a new sort of patriotism unlocked for Penguins fans that can back Mike Sullivan again with a very good team. But if things fall apart, they've had this situation before, though.
Mm-hmm.
Lest we forget Dan Bylsma and Sochi. So
yeah,
as long as something like that doesn't happen again, there should be this level of fanfare for Sullivan from Pittsburgh and Team USA.
two things. One, I would not put it past a portion of this fan base to actively root against the United States simply because Mike Sullivan's there. You said that it might reinvigorate some people's patriotism. It might send it down the toilet for some of the fan base, because they might be like, well, I don't want to see Sully. Come on. We've been bashed on this guy for 3 years, but I digress to that point. Secondly, what you were talking there, it's just kind of the realization of, oh yeah, Jake Guentzel is probably the best American-born player the Penguins have had in Crosby's career. And his entire Penguins career, there was 0 best-on-best tournaments. The last one was 2016 in the World Cup. Guentzel comes onto the scene in 2017, has an entire career in Pittsburgh, and then it takes him getting traded and then signing in Tampa Bay for him to get that opportunity to play for Team USA. So again, if you're on the fence because you have mixed feelings about Mike Sullivan, you can go root for Jake Guentzel, because he did so much for Pittsburgh, and this is his first chance and his first kick at the can. Jeff, I'll let you have the floor here because you didn't get to respond to this yet. I'm
just enjoying listening to the podcast unfold. You know, I still remember listening to Tip of the Ice-Burgh before we launched Fly Penguins Fly, when I was still living out in Jersey City. I launched it from the attic in that house. So it's just cool for me to get to be here and be part of this community with you guys. Yeah. You know, Mike's maybe got a couple of Sully's got a couple of kids on the ice. I mean, there's inevitably going to be a time when the Austin Matthews line is out there and Jack Hughes and Jake Guentzel are buzzing around, probably the heaviest shot in the NHL in number 34 from Toronto. But also on the ice might be that Werenski and McAvoy pairing. So Guentzel being a baby pen that essentially made the journey from Wilkes up to Pittsburgh with Mike, following that parking lot interview. That was the first taste of Mike Sullivan most Penguins fans got from Mike. Forgive me, the reporter, I can almost remember their name, who got the piece, the little scoop on Mike before he made his way to Pittsburgh that day. But he's going to have all kinds of storylines going. Like you said, it's kind of cool for me, even just looking at the fourth line, and somebody who's been a bane of our existence in Brock Nelson, but indisputably a great player and a good, example for a lot of folks in the league. So it's a deep team. It's a cool team. Another Pittsburgh guy and JT Miller out there for Team USA. Just looking up and down the lineup.
Trocheck as well.
Oh yeah, Vince Trocheck. Thanks. Oh, my gosh, I have this sort of like Rangers fingers up. But also, Jordan, you and I talked a lot about the Wild as kind of our side team, our side piece team, as in one of our episodes to root for in the Western Conference. Now that the Penguins are essentially out of the playoff, we have so many cool players from the Wild to root for, not the least of which being Brock Faber. And last night watching Gustafsson hold the fort down in the absence of Jacob Markstrom. So many storylines. Team USA, Mike Sullivan, I root for the guy. I like to imagine these post-Thanksgiving dinner cigar or Guinness moments that probably or almost certainly happen there. A couple of Boston University Terriers sharing stories about the alma mater, both having played in the NHL, both having gone to school at the same place. Was it Charlie McAvoy in the old commercial like a few seasons back that was like, "I'm Charlie McAvoy. Do you need ice time?" Do you remember that one?
I don't remember that one. I don't know if either of you guys do.
It was like on NHL Network. "Hi, I'm Charlie McAvoy. Are you looking for ice time?" And when he couldn't have had less
personality
in it, but he's so great on the ice. I got to say the Bruins team, talk about tangents. I never do them, but I'm doing one right now. Anybody? It's funny. I do tangents all the time. A lot of great personalities in recent years in Boston. I've actually become a big Brad Marchand fan in spite of originally hating him as like a sort of a face licker. If this were an Alien script, he'd be not the face sucker, but the face licker. But Charlie McAvoy, David Pastrnak, obviously one of the best personalities in the league. Well, not going to be in this tournament, kicking it back over to whoever wants to save me from my own self. Right now.
You're good. You can enjoy Brad Marchand when he's playing for a different team before ahead of the trade deadline. So don't worry about it.
Whoa.
You could always say that he's from Nova Scotia, and that's the saving grace in Pittsburgh. But I thought it was interesting that Jeff said that he started Fly Penguins Fly from an attic, because we essentially started Tip of the Ice-Burgh from a basement, a.k.a. my apartment in Bellevue, which was underground. So, I mean, hey.
Wow. Yeah.
Different starting points, getting to the same point. Love all of it. But let's jump over to a nice little quiz that the Penguins social media put out. It was a "What Penguin Are You" quiz, and we've always seen the BuzzFeed quizzes, but Penguins fans have always wanted something a little closer to home. Well, they got it this week, so you can go check that out on all of the Penguins social media. I believe it's on Penn's Inside Scoop as well. So we all went through and completed this quiz, and I'm curious because one, Jeff threw his in the group chat, so we all know what his was. Anyway, with Ricard Raquel, but I honestly think, and I'll start with Horwat. Horwat, I don't know what you did. I don't know who you got. Something tells me it's Michael Bunting.
Oh, Michael Bunting's a good one. No, I was given Alex Nedeljkovic, which, having chatted with him a couple of times last season, yeah, I can see it. Dude's just a sports nut, and definitely seems to wear it on his sleeve, or wear it on his chest in terms of a Myles Garrett jersey. I wish I could have been around to ask him his thoughts on that, now that I think of it, of the whole Myles Garrett situation. But yeah, I think just the sports fandom aside, Alex Nedeljkovic just does seem like a genuinely fun person to hang out with, fun person to be around, just to have conversations with, even outside of hockey or sports. The little blurb on the Penguins website for him was, whether it's facing challenges head on or supporting those around you, you bring a sense of confidence that people can count on. You both are dependable, smart, and nothing gets past you. I don't know about that last part, but it's certainly a good definition of, like I said, I just knowing him a little bit through talking to him in the locker room a couple of times. Good dude and a great match to have, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I was literally thinking Alex Nedeljkovic for Jordan. Like the heart on your sleeve, unapologetically, can't I say it? Unapologetically yourself. I mean, I remember the video you sent me, Horo, when we were back in the locker room last year, where Nedeljkovic is talking about Jágr, and it's like Joe Hendry, like say his name and he appears, and Jágr just peeked his head out, and Nedeljkovic just turned around and goes, "He was behind me." That's pretty cool. Like,
I like that.
Yeah, so he was, you predicted him as Michael Bunting and me as Ned, and he was Ned and I'm Michael Bunting. That was my my personality twin.
I'm just off.
Well, you were close. We're like very proximity wise, our boxes are next to each other, so just yeah, it's all good. But yeah, Michael Bunting, primarily because of apparently my love for Mac Miller and my pride in the city of Pittsburgh. So that was what it the two of the biggest points, which I do love Mac Miller and I'm very proud of the city of Pittsburgh. So I'll take it. He's a spunky character on the ice. So yeah, I wouldn't have pegged myself as Michael Bunting, but I will take it gladly.
Really quick interjection regarding Mac Miller, the Lord of Blue Slide Park. By the way, if anybody out there, you're ever cruising through Pittsburgh, you're a big Pittsburgh sports fan, you don't get to come here that much, you're on 376 West, about to take the turn around the bend and reveal the Pittsburgh skyline, you throw on Blue Slide Park, you will get chills up your spine like you can't even believe. It is the sound of the city. I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know Mac Miller was till I moved here and was told, oh, you should go. That's where Blue Slide Park. I was like, what's that? And they were like, oh my God, do you not know who Mac Miller is? It's unbelievable music. But Mac Miller held one of my good musician pals' best friends up in an alley with a sword for money.
Interesting.
So Mac Miller and Michael Bunting, that just goes hand in hand, because I think Michael Bunting, if he had access to a sword, he would use whatever tools were necessary to harry, to perturb, to get under the skin of, an opposing team's player. And then if he ever got traded to that team, he'd be their best buddy and do the same thing to the Penguins. So as he, I'm sure, did for Toronto and other teams he played for. So I love that for you, Jordan. I think that's great. And I could have seen either. Horwat, you got the backwards hat going. I think Ned does rock that occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little of a Mac Miller poster sitting right here, too. It's normally not on our screen whenever Brilliance, Belsky, and I do our videos here. But, I mean, this wall that cannot be seen is all a bunch of concert posters of shows that I've gone to.
Mm-hmm. I do see Rumors. I see Fleetwood Mac Rumors on your wall. That's one of the best records of all time.
And I try and change these records every episode. So
wow.
My wall is usually a mess, but yeah, it's the Mac Miller one does make a lot of sense as well.
Do you
And-
have rumors on the wall because
Oh boy.
you have a trade rumor to present to us?
No, literally, I picked these out at random.
Okay. Okay.
Belsey can also attest to that. I forget what
There's no rhyme or reason whatsoever.
There isn't. Sometimes I do try and relay it to things that are going on. I can remember I popped up a couple of Green Day records whenever they were in town, and that's the only one I can think of right now.
We record at 8 a.m. It's hard to have brain function for anything else at 8 a.m.
I'm lucky I remember to change them, to be honest. So
I'm damn impressed you have Green Day on vinyl.
Oh yeah, I got Green Day on vinyl.
That's
Have
incredible.
a ton of Mac Miller on vinyl. My vinyl collection is large. I don't need to dig into it. We have hockey to talk about still.
That's right.
Yeah. I'll close out the which Penguin are you quiz section of this episode by just saying, because of our affinity for milkshakes, me and Brian, I got Brian Rust.
I was going to guess that.
That was the one that I got, just because, I mean, anybody who knows me knows I'd rather have a milkshake than an ice cream cone. So it fits very well with Brian Rust. So a very fun quiz. And if you're a Penguins fan, I suggest you check it out again. It's on all Penguins social channels. You can definitely find it at Penn's Inside Scoop. Shout out to Michelle Crecchiolo, who does a tremendous job in everything that she does for the Penguins fan base. Let's close it out here with a quick segment about the Pittsburgh Penguins, because we've talked kind of a little bit about the Pens in accordance to Four Nations and honors and all this other stuff. But what about the team itself? As of right now, they're 7th in the Metropolitan Division, 14th in the Eastern Conference, and 6 points back of a playoff spot in the wild card race. 13 of their final 25 games are against playoff teams right now. So a very even split between good teams and bad teams left on the Penguins calendar. With that in mind, let's start with the negative, because I always want to end on a positive. How far down do you think the Penguins can fall in the standings? Let's start with Jeff on this one, because I think you look at the Penguins right now. Yeah, they played better leading into the Four Nations break, but at the same time, we saw last year what happened leading into the trade deadline. Do those demons prop up? And if they do, how far can the Penguins fall?
Well, I think the basic answer is the Penguins will not fall far enough to get that top pick, simply because of what we're witnessing right now with Sid Crosby. If he were not such a force of nature who will refuse to stop competing, then I think that we would have a chance at one of those, top 5 picks. Right now, as you said, we're a couple of spots off the bottom of just the Metro or the Eastern Conference. Yeah, that's right. And then looking at the records, the points again right now, games played. Yeah, I mean, the Sharks with only 37 points. Yeah, by far the worst team. In fact, 41. Yeah, so it's going to be tough for us. We're sitting at 55 points. There's a handful of teams below us there. We're at the 5th or 6th spot, 7th. You said it before, didn't you? And I'm a terrible listener. But it's going to be tough. We're going to end up the bottom of the mushy middle is my prediction, which is the worst of the worst place to be. If you're going to, you might as well get close. I don't think the Penguins are going to be in the same position they were last year, hoping Washington lost or whatever it was to eke into a spot. It's not going to happen for the Pens this year, I don't think. And I actually really enjoy the fact that Sid so clearly sat both of those last couple games out. It's like if he could play in game 1 of the Four Nations face-off, he probably could have played against the Flyers that day if he really wanted to. But he prioritized the Four Nations face-off, which says loud and clear to me that in some way, shape, or form, he was recognizing that the Penguins are out of the playoff race. Because I think he is, much like we said before about the potential for him to become a hermit and take his time away from the game, the reason that he has been so enigmatic in some ways, I think, it's very simple. It's like really not a mystery. He's so dedicated to his job and to his craft and his role as the captain. He doesn't have time for anything else. I don't want to, let's just say, any other off-ice stuff that's positive in his life that we wonder why we don't hear about it more, etc. I won't even go into that, but because it's not any of our business. We don't hear it because he's literally doing everything possible to maximize his performance. It's all anyone talks about who's played hockey with him, coached him, is that he's on the ice an hour, 2 hours before, 2 hours after every practice, taking time out, for more of those captain roles, like the children's hospital visits, no cameras, no press, like just doing everything he can to maximize his time now in this role. And so the fact that we've seen a signal from him in his commitment and his body language toward this Team Canada thing and away from this is his job right now. That's also his NHL job. He got named captain to the Four Nations Face-Off team. So I guess I'm overanalyzing it, but I just think it goes as Sid goes. I mean, we won a game against the Rangers the other day without Sidney Crosby, and it was without Evgeny Malkin, and our goaltending situation is not what we thought it would have been or hoped it would have been a couple years ago at this point. But I just think it's going to be the worst of the worst, bottom of the mushy middle, not all the way down at the bottom of the pack.
I would say that the bottom of the pack is definitely the floor. That's about as low as this team could drop. I don't actually see them falling below the Sabres or some of those teams out west, like you mentioned, the Blackhawks or the Sharks. But this team isn't. I've been kind of, I kind of stuck a fork in them a couple of weeks ago, I think, at this point. And I just don't foresee too many more wins coming, no matter how hard Crosby tries. I mean, we're seeing Crosby have a great, so far, one game of the Four Nations Face-Off because he has a literal Hall of Fame team around him.
Yeah.
Whereas when he gets back to Pittsburgh, it's going to be playing with, here's Philip Tomasino. You're going to get Rickard Rakell. That's solid. You're going to get Brian Rust. That's not bad. But here's a bunch of guys. And a bunch of guys can only do so much in the NHL. I'd say as for a ceiling, it's not much higher than where they are right now. I could see Crosby and Malkin coming back from injury and turning something on and maybe getting them up to as high as 10th or 11th in the East, but nothing much more than that. I don't see any sort of wild card berth happening. I don't see any sort of real chase for the postseason happening. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I'm setting my expectations extraordinarily low.
Likewise, I've been with you for a while. Actually, I think a month or two ago was when I realized they're not going anywhere this year, and the best thing for them would be to convincingly miss the playoffs, not be anywhere near the hunt, because they just don't have the roster for any type of playoff success right now. And you do have some solid depth guys, but they're lacking so much in the middle that it's insurmountable for them to try to make any run at anything this year. I don't think they'll drop below the Flyers. I think they're a little bit of a better team. They have the bump on the Flyers at this point, but honestly, I don't see them jumping anybody really in the standings unless they get tremendously lucky and other teams start really playing poorly. But I also don't want them to jump any higher in the standings than they are right now. I want to see if they can, how low can they go as low as you can, like increase your chances to get one of those top 5 picks, because this season has been over for quite some time. And now that they sort of have their 2 to 3 year plan in front of them for what to do with this team in the future, don't worry about this season. It's just not worth it. And they're going to pick up games here and there like they did against the Rangers, and that was a really fun game on the dad trip. That was great, but then they dropped one to the Flyers the next night. So it's going to be a lot of mediocrity down the stretch, I think. And I'm hoping that they can just stay where they are and not really move upwards at all, because that would only hurt them long term. And they're not going to make it in the playoffs. And even if they did, they wouldn't do anything with it. So yeah, it's a bit of a bummer of a season, but we have the Four Nations stuff right now, which is really fun. And we get to watch Sid play with all of these Hall of Fame teammates. So it kind of provides some storylines for Pens fans to watch and pay attention to this season. But I think the Pens are, once they come back from this break, there's not much they can do to salvage what the bed that they've made and lied down in.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of on the same lines as both of you guys and all three of you, because even if everything goes right for the Penguins, say Malkin comes back and he looks like last year's Malkin and not what we saw the last 20 games before his injury, even if Alex Nedeljkovic stays on this .930 save percentage, winning 60% of his game pace, even if Crosby takes it to another level and Rickard Rakell continues and stays on the lineup and continues to go up towards a career high season, same with Brian Rust, I still think they fall shy of a playoff spot. So if all things go well and you're still falling shy of the playoffs, it's just, there's too many teams. There are too many teams in front of them. And yeah, you can say, well, maybe one or two are going to fall off the face of the earth. And that happens every year, especially when there's teams in the race like the Detroit Red Wings, like the Montreal Canadiens, as an example, because those guys are young and they haven't been in this position where, hey, it's crunch time. You got to go and you make the playoffs. Maybe one or two of those teams fall off, but they're just counting on so many teams to have to do that. And when there's teams in the mix like Boston, who have the veterans to go the opposite direction, teams like New York, who have the veterans to go in the opposite direction, it just makes it hard to feel like they're going to be able to plant their foot in the ground and just get back to where they needed to be. Maybe they give themselves a puncher's chance if all goes well for them, but outside of that, maybe they fall 5-6 points out, but that's where they're at right now. So how much can they really climb? I agree. I don't think it's very much. As far as how far they can fall, it's Sidney Crosby. And looking at where those other teams are in the standings, I don't think that there's any chance they get into that top four. And meaning top four as the draft order. I don't think they get to the bottom four in the NHL just because there's so much separating those four teams and the Penguins right now. But fifth overall pick, that feels like a realistic floor for the Pittsburgh Penguins this season. It stinks to say that because we haven't been able to say that for a long time, but it's really what it's feeling like right now.
It's where we're at.
So that's going to do it for this episode, crossover episode of Fly Penguins Fly, the Game Day podcast, and the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Shout out to Jeff Taylor and shout out to Jordan DeFigio for joining us on this show. Also, shout out to Nick Horwat because it's always right next to me. But it's been a great show. Been great having you guys on. Been great being on, and hope to do this again in the future.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
All that. You guys do a great job.
Yep. So thank you to everybody who is tuned in. Remember, you can find us at Tip of the Ice-Burgh by just searching Tip of the Ice-Burgh on YouTube. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Or you can check us out anywhere you get your podcast from. You can find Fly Penguins Fly on X at PensPod and anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.